Welcome back to the replay studio, everyone. We're back with another episode of Dark, episode 7. Before we get into the recap, I have two theories, right? So, theory time ahead of the episode. I've gone back and actually watched episode 5 and episode 3, right? Because I believe there were some things in those episodes that I may not have connected before, and I believe I have enough conclusive evidence now to give merit to at least one of the two theories. I went back to the conversation that the stranger was having, just outside his father's grave, and he mentioned to him that he knew his dad first off, and that his dad saved his life many years ago, but he didn't realize it until much later. And I think that the incident that he's referring to is actually back in episode 1, where the teens were running away from the cave. And, we were all saying, okay, why didn't, what's his name? Magnus. Why did Magnus leave his brother and leave the two behind? Um, and The only ones that were out of our sight for a period were Jonas and Mikkel, right? And at that point, I think what happened is it could have been either of the two that was actually taken, either Mikkel or Jonas. And I think the kid that got taken at that point in time, became the key to the cycle in and of itself. So in him saying to Jonas that, okay, Mikkel, he said his father, he didn't say Mikkel, but he said his father saved his life. I think, I don't know if perhaps it was by chance, Mikkel did something during that time. We didn't see how Mikkel was actually taken. So it could be that he did something, maybe he pushed Jonas, or it could have been something by chance that, Mikkel just happened because he came to join the team when he wasn't supposed to be there. If you recall, his brother was hitting him in the head and saying, "What are you doing here? You're a kid. You need to go back home." And he's saying, "I'm not a kid anymore." And so maybe his arriving there, is what the stranger is referring to, in that, okay, he came, and instead of Jonas being taken, Miko was the one that actually got taken instead and sent back to 1986. I think for me that's conclusive enough to say that the stranger is Jonas. I believe he's been traveling through time, attempting to, and we've seen him obsess over in his hotel room. When is Mikkel? When is Mikkel? I think he's attempting to find Mikkel in the right moment in time where he can actually break the cycle that they're actually in. So he came back to this time in 2019, but he seems to have missed him, which gives me the impression that you cannot move through time freely. I believe that certain events need to take place and happen at a specific time. And as I theorized about that, I recalled it was Trant and Peter that were they were in the cellar outside that cabin in the woods, and they were expecting someone to arrive, and they had a notepad with a lot of different entries, which I think specified different times in which someone crossed over, right? So that lends itself to what I'm thinking, in that I believe they can move through time at specific dates and times, which is why when Michael died, he told his mom to open the letter at a specific date, but also a specific time. All right. So I think that is what Jonas has been doing, and when he came to 2019, he gave himself the tools necessary to travel through time, because he needs to ensure that he still exists. He needs to make that trip. So Jonas needs to make that trip so that he still exists to continue his work. Only the only thought that came to mind to me at the time was that, okay, he had to have altered time a bit in order to do that, because the first time around he probably wouldn't have had someone come to him to give him those tools to find the cave a lot faster. So to some extent, I think when he traveled through time, he aged up a bit, um, and then moved back. I suggest that is when he entered the cave, when Jonas entered the cave, we saw he had two options. He was on a fork. He had two options. He could either go left or go right. And I believe he went right, which tells us that there are three timelines. I mentioned this before about 2 episodes or 3 episodes ago. That I believe there are three timelines, and we've only been introduced to two. I've just not narrowed down my theory as to whether the third is actually 33 years in the future, or it goes further in the past. So I think we'll get more evidence as time goes along to support that. That was my other theory, by the way. That there's a third timeline that I don't have the evidence to support just yet, so it's still just a theory. But yeah, I do believe there are three timelines. It's either in the future or further in the past beyond 1986. I'm leaning towards um, you know what? We'll revisit. We'll revisit when I have a bit more evidence. But yeah, I think the stranger is definitely Jonas. A few years after he arrives in 1986 and gathers enough information, and then as he got older, he traveled to 2019 to give himself the tools to get to 1986 sooner. I think. 'Cause I think if he hadn't arrived, if his older self hadn't arrived, it would have taken him a bit more time to decipher the map that Michael left behind. So in doing that, I think the stranger is trying to catch up, so to speak. Um, so yeah, that is the what I believe is conclusive at this point. I think we have enough evidence to conclusively say that the stranger is certainly Jonas. Uh, yeah. Now, as for the events of the last episode, we I, yeah, it was with Michael Jonas. Sorry, ended up in 1986. He's quite a shocker for him, and I suppose I'm not sure how it would take him that long to actually track Michael down. You know, since that seems to be that appears to be his objective as the stranger. Perhaps he needs to find Nickel before he makes the jump to 1986 to actually break the cycle. So it's an interesting ride, and of course there was a major revelation with what was it with Regina, and I mean I think I called it a few episodes back, about 2 episodes ago, that I that there was some history between Ulrich and Regina, but my thought at the time was that there was some romantic involvement between the two, and perhaps he pretended to like her and broke her heart, and then she, maybe attempted suicide or something to that effect. But from what we gathered in the last episode, they pulled some sort of prank on her and tied her in front of the caves, and it was Ulrich, and I believe Katarina was involved based on his conversation with her at the hotel, and whatever it is that happened to her, we're not sure, but something happened to her at that point, and I think soon after is where she cut herself, and she did mention something interesting, which was that his brother, Mads, wouldn't have disappeared if, because she said his brother was walking her home or something to that effect, and he wouldn't, all that wouldn't have happened had he not, done what he did to her. So that was an interesting bit. But the good news is, I mean, he now knows the truth, about Hannah, as to what he'll do with it. I mean, he already ended things prior to that, but I guess now he knows the person she is. But it also means that his hatred of Regina over all these years, was misplaced. She had a right to feel the way she does about him because of what he did to her. And I'm not even sure if it's unrelated, because she's been diagnosed with cancer, right? Could that have something to do with what happened, that the day at the caves, because while she was tied up, the lights were flickering again, which means someone crossed over. But I don't know if that, you know, them they're positioning her there at the time. I don't know if that had anything to do with her being diagnosed with cancer later on. Although I think that would have more to do with just being in that town than anything else. But yeah, I mean, Ori confronted Hannah, and as I said, she's a rather twisted individual, and she does need help. She does need help. Um, not much he can do now. He almost ruined his marriage, and Katerina now knows the truth about it. At least she suspects that is what is happening, but she did check the phone records and called the number that she saw that was called several times, and she recognized Hannah on the other end. So he may have ruined his marriage for this person that this with bad intentions, towards him and his family. And she, as I said before, it's been years. If she's not gotten over this person after all these years, then she's she's mental, man. She needs some help. She needs some help. But yeah, another exciting episode, guys, and I'm looking forward to the next one. So let's dive right in and check it out. Okay. Helg. Oh.
Ich erinnere mich.
It's been going on for that long. Interesting. He's enjoying this. I mean, for whatever Ulrich did to Regna, I mean, he deserves some punishment, but not the accusation that's made against him, I don't believe.
Den wir gefunden haben im Wald.
Sounds crazy, but I know who he is.
Naja, wenn ihr nicht rausfindet, wer das ist, wird er eingeäschert und bekommt ein anonymes Grab.
Das ist rein theoretisch. Dass er schon länger tot ist und nach seinem Tod irgendwie konserviert wurde?
Konserviert.
Not,
Tief.
not likely.
33 Jahre.
I love this coroner's sense of humor.
Das ist sehr unmöglich.
For some reason, every time we come back to 1986, I keep expecting to hear the Scorpions, and here I am, rock like a hurricane. But no, I keep being disappointed.
Warte. Suchst du jemanden?
Interesting. So she met him before.
Ja. Michael.
Seems like everyone bullied her.
Wir haben ja die Schichtpläne vom AKW bekommen für die Nacht, in der Mats verschwunden ist.
Fall mit dem Bruder dran. Anzeige wegen Vergewaltigung. Ich meine, wir haben ihn in Betracht gezogen, ob der nicht vielleicht mit dem...
Ermitteln nicht aufgrund von Gefühlen, sondern von Indizien. Du hast noch 3 Monate.
At least this guy sounds competent.
Dann kannst du machen, was du willst. Und so lange hast du.
Egon.
Den vermissten Niedlichenjungen. Martin will Wege und Uhrzeiten von allen Leuten, die in der Nacht in der Nähe
Yeah, so I
waren,
guess
dokumentieren und
this isn't the first time the facility has been visited about a missing kid, and
Termin machen und du kommst in die Wache. Übung. Dienstag.
doesn't sound that way.
Hattest du Schichtende?
Dann fängt die Nachtschicht an.
Bist du mit dem Auto gefahren?
Die Landstraße runter. Ich habe noch was besorgt für
The
mich.
cabin. At least he's trying to do his job. His obsession with Ulrich is clouding his judgment quite a bit, but he's asking the right questions. Never met with him, did he? And she finally have a warrant. Yes. That I'm convinced they'll find anything. Alexander looks to be a careful man. And out in the rain.
Ich hab was mit dem Arm. Ich bin gerade auf dem Weg zum Krankenhaus.
Steig ein. Ich fahr dich.
Well, you need to get there. Might as well. Was that the truth? I mean, where Hannah works? I know back in episode 1, she was giving Alexander a massage, but I thought she traveled around, and that was her job, not that she was stationed at the plant.
Unter euch Teenagern
Asking her about Ulrich again.
ist da gerade Satanismus im
Ich weiß nicht. Ich glaube nicht.
Ruf deine Mutter an, dass sie dich abholt. Du solltest jetzt, bist du nicht allein.
He's trying. He's trying. I won't judge Egon too much. I think he's trying to do what's best. He's just making a lot of mistakes along the way. Now, how does this tie into everything else? I wonder if it's connected to the cave on the other side, perhaps. Or could it be that perhaps he was just illegally storing something and it's completely unrelated to the whole time traveling thing, or are they related?
Ich will Ihnen ein paar Fragen stellen. 1986 ist im Winter ein Junge verschwunden. Mats Nielsen, können Sie sich daran erinnern? Sie waren damals bei
I mean, I think Helg wants to cooperate. No, right? Oh, come on, Ulrich, don't.
Ich bin Polizist, ich will noch ein paar Fragen stellen.
Ich kenne Sie.
Was? Was haben Sie gerade gesagt?
He's going about it the wrong way. He's gonna. Come on, Ulrich.
Wo ist Mickel?
Not a good move, Ulrich. They're never gonna let you talk to him again.
Mein Sohn!
Does he approach them? Or is it too risky? Ah. He was expecting him.
Genauso wenig verrückt wie sein Vater. Manchmal fällt es uns schwer, Dinge zu begreifen, die gegen alles sprechen, wozu unser Verstand konditioniert wurde. Wie müssen die Menschen sich gefühlt haben, als man ihnen zum ersten Mal sagte, die Erde sei eine Kugel?
Irgendwo in der Höhle ist ein Riss in der Zeit oder was? Und Mickel hängt hier rum und wird irgendwann zu meinem Vater?
Auch wenn du es jetzt nicht glauben willst, das da ist dein Vater.
And I'm you. I know it's gonna be true.
Ich Mickel jetzt wieder zurück und bringe alles wieder in Ordnung.
Hast du das doch nicht verstanden? Wenn du Mickel jetzt zurückbringst, dann greifst du in den Lauf der Dinge ein.
Dann löschst du deine eigene Existenz aus.
Yeah, and you disappear.
Deine Rolle in all dem hier ist viel größer, als du denkst.
Für ein Leben. Wofür wirst du dich entscheiden?
Damn. He's got to be like, there goes my shot with Martha. Good thing we didn't hook up earlier.
Dass ich dich suspendieren muss.
Passieren Dinge, die machen keinen Sinn. Vielleicht werde ich ja verrückt.
Everything is crazy, but you can't go about it
Den Wald gefunden hat.
in a crazy way, otherwise you'll get no answers.
Irgendwie hat Helge mit all dem zu tun.
Soll er das körperlich schaffen?
Vielleicht ist er nicht allein.
Peter.
Geh nach Hause.
Come on, you know there's some truth to what he's saying. And you suspect it yourself.
Du musst nicht für ihn lügen.
Aber ich lüge nicht. Ich habe das gewollt. Wir beide haben das gewollt. Er hat mich nicht gezwungen. Was überhaupt erzählt?
Das darf ich nicht sagen. Wichtig ist nur, dass du weißt, dass Ulrich dir im Moment nichts tun kann.
Wenn, dann habe ich ihn dazu gedrängt. Ich habe ihm gesagt, er soll von mir Frau
Blasphemy! That's unheard of.
niemals wehtun.
He's an old timer, and I'm sure the whole concept of that seems very odd to him. Yeah, you're about to get another suspension from the bedroom.
Das weiß
Why have you been calling Hannah as often as you have been?
Hannah und du.
Should have come clean the first time around when she actually asked him if he cheated. Should have just said it and gotten it over with and say it's over.
Irgendwie habe ich es die ganze Zeit gewusst. Ich hab's nur nicht sehen wollen.
I mean, people talk, and people have been saying things to her, even in the townhouse meeting that they had at the school auditorium, I think. Regina was implying it. Come on, you heard yourself talk earlier. You can't change things with him here. I know, I mean, what he says makes sense, but if he takes him back, I mean, while it may erase Jonas's existence, wouldn't it break the cycle, you know? What if that's what needs to happen? If all the time that the stranger, i.e. Jonas, has been spending searching, he hasn't been able to find a solution, maybe that is it.
Eine Woche bevor Max. Vor dem Haus gegenüber hat sich ein Pfarrer mit einem Mann gestritten.
Noah.
Heute früh
Exactly as he
habe ich
is.
denselben Mann gesehen.
Wen jetzt, den Pfarrer?
Nein,
Oh,
nicht den Pfarrer.
okay.
Den anderen. Es war derselbe Mann. Sah genauso aus wie vor 93
Isn't Helg the one with the scar on his face?
Ich weiß, das klingt verrückt. Aber es war derselbe Mann.
That makes sense if he was the one Peter and Trant were waiting for. Helg. Yeah. I guess that explains. He said he can change the past and the future.
Wusstest du, dass dein Vater 86 bei der Polizei vorgeladen war?
Nein. Warum fragst du das?
Die Hütte am Waldweg.
Answer the question, Peter.
War das schon 86?
Ich weiß nicht, warum du das wissen willst.
Hat dein Vater 86 in der Hütte gewohnt?
machen sich Sorgen.
Yeah, I don't think the kids are worried. You're worried.
Charlotte.
Oh, okay. He's going back? Hmm. Before when Trant and Peter arrived, they said they were expecting someone here. Which now I'm imagining was actually Helg, but is this the room that he was held in with the chair where they had Eric, but maybe in a different time? Okay, so it's this 2019. I mean, I don't have an approve. Maybe that wallpaper that she actually found. I don't recall the layouts of the room. We got a few shots of it, so I'll have to go back to check. Okay, we're back in 2019. So I'll have to go back to check to see, when Eric was in the room, if there was any similarities with the wallpaper. But I think just perhaps that may be the very room that the chair was in. I can never look at Martha the same way again. Same book he gave to Claudia back in 1986. Seems Helg plays a much more important role in this than I initially thought he did. He got up a long time ago, though, unless he's trying to help Ulrich. Watch your back. Why would you do all of this, Helg? Why? Oh no. $1953. Alright guys, episode 7 of Dark, and things are starting to heat up. I did a quick check back to episode 1 to see the room where Eric was actually being strapped into the centrifuge. At least I think that's what it was, but into the chair. And it does in fact have the same wrapping that that Charlotte discovered this episode in that room. So certainly there seems to be a heavy focus on Helg. I did not think he would be such an integral part of the story, but it appears Helg has been the one traveling back and kidnapping these kids. So he would have taken Eric. He would have taken Mads as well, and potentially Yasin. But as to, I guess, younger Helg is doing this, and older Helg is I don't know, at least the Helg in this timeline, not say the older one, the Helg in this time in 2019 appears to be getting the memories as they happen, right? And I think which is why he's, he appears delusional because these memories are coming to him. I think, I don't know how it would be that, I mean, someone from this timeline, but yeah. Someone is giving him the instructions. I presume it's Noah. Um, and as he changes things, as he takes these kids, the Helgen 2019 then gets those memories, and then he tries to tell someone that it's when it's happening, and no one believes him, and he just comes across as a crazy person. Yeah. So Helge is tied to this somehow. He has history with that room. Um, as to how he obtained it, Charlotte said she wasn't. Oh, she asked Peter. Peter said he doesn't know how he came about it or why he kept it, because something tragic happened to him there. We saw very early this episode where Helg was, he was. I'm assuming he was one of the kids that was taken to the room. But he's the first kid that was put in that chair that we see that is still living. Eric, I believe we saw Eric dead. His body hasn't been discovered yet for some reason. I'm waiting for that to happen, but I'm still not seeing where it happened. It could be a situation where his body ends up. I know he dragged him back. I think it was 2019 that he dragged the body through the forest. So I'm not sure why no one has discovered that yet. But he's the only kid, Helge is the only one that supposedly, but we didn't see him go directly into the chair. It was just in a room. I'm only assuming that he was in the chair because of the scar, although the scar was only on one portion of his face and not the entirety of it. And I'm guessing perhaps that is why he's the only one who can perform this task. With the exception of maybe Jonas, who I think is working against Noah. I think Trant, I think Peter, maybe Alexander. I'm not sure if Alexander's thing is tied to this or if it's something different altogether. But I think they're all working alongside Noah for I think Ulrich's mom, Yana, said she saw the man with the scar and a priest arguing outside. I'm going to assume that is actually Noah. And he's been a part of the story for a while now. I recall going back to, I think it was episode 2. No, it was episode 3, where it was actually mentioned. Egon was in the field when he discovered the 33 sheep. And I'm not sure if it was the farmer, but the farmer said to him that he quoted a scripture to Egon, and Egon said, "I didn't know you were a man of faith, or I didn't know you go to church," or something to that effect. And the man responded and said, "There's a new preacher, that's him, and he believes him to be a good man." I believe that was Noah. So he's been mentioned quite a few times throughout. We just didn't realize that was him at the time. So Yana saw the priest fighting with Helg outside the house. So yeah. Clearly, both he and Trant are working with Noah, and I think Jonah and the stranger. I think I think this is definitive proof that the stranger is Jonas. That stark warning that he gave him before that. Okay, if you do this, you would cease to exist. I'm wondering if perhaps that has happened. If it happened, I don't know how he would be alive, around to actually give him the warning. Unless something happens to change that. But I think she was giving him that warning because, he has intimate knowledge of what happens if you do it. So I think it's clear at this point that the stranger is Jonas. And I think Jonas is working against Noah, whatever it is Noah is trying to accomplish. He's the only one we've seen so far that hasn't aged throughout the timeline. And I don't think he got that car through the cave. So it may very well be that that the key to all of this is his gaining immortality to some extent, or he doesn't age. Still think it has to be something, more grand than that. But he's the only one we've seen so far that hasn't aged. So there's that. That's definitely something to, you know, motivate you to twist the timeline to your will. So yeah, so I think Hell was definitely a part of the experiment. I don't know if perhaps he was the first. We saw Noah write something on the wall, or two dates on the wall, two dates in November 1953. So that does confirm my theory that there is a third timeline. 1953, incidentally, is 33 years from 1986. So it's not in the future, and so it's in the past. There's 1953, 1986, and 2019. So these are the three timelines that we're working with. We've not gone to 1953 just yet. So that should be interesting if when we eventually get there. I think that's the other fork, that other path in the fork that Jonas came across that he never went down. So yeah, we're getting there. A lot of pieces were added to the puzzle this episode. I've been wanting Charlotte and Ulrich to start sharing information, but Ulrich has proven himself to be a bit too erratic at the moment. I mean, understandably, you know, his son is missing, so I can understand why he's frantic and trying to find as much information as possible. But I don't think he's going to be able to solve much by just doing that, you know. But things are getting interesting, guys. Getting interesting. I can't wait for the next episode and to get more answers to put my puzzle together. So can't wait. Be sure to post down below, guys. Let me know what your thoughts are on this episode. Hit like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys for the next one.